Hello everyone, Zaid from zSecurity here, and in today's video, Dimitris is going to show you a very common method that hackers use to hack into WordPress websites. Make sure you check out the timestamps below and use them to skip to the relevant and interesting section to you, because he's going to cover much more than simply hacking a WordPress website. He's going to exfiltrate the hacked system to look for sensitive information. He's going to find login information for a legacy Windows server. He's going to log into that Windows server and escalate his privileges to become the highest privileged user, the highest administrator on the system. He's going to do all of this in a lab that we created for you guys to practice this stuff legally. So check out the link below. You can use it for free to practice everything that he's going to do in this video. So it's going to be a juicy video filled with really good information. I'm actually going to be popping in every now and then to add my comments if I felt like I needed to comment or clarify a step. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoy our content and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already.
Hello everyone, Ictus here, back again with another video. In today's video, I'll be showing you how to root the zSecurity common CTF. As you can see, there are no winners in this competition because there was a technical issue with the second server on the CTF and people were not able to root the second machine. So this machine, it's actually a really hard machine, and that is because it consists of two machines. There is a Linux machine, and as you can see, there is a Windows machine as well. And in order to win, you have to root the Windows machine. So it says here that we have to gather information from the Linux machine and then root the Windows machine. Great, so without further ado, let's get started. We can see right here the IP address of the first machine. So I'm just going to copy that and I'm going to run an nmap scan on it. So the command I'll be using is nmap-sv-a, and I'm going to paste the IP address of the machine. -sv probes all of the open ports, and -a enables the OS detection. So now let's hit enter and let's wait for this to run. I'm going to copy the IP address of the machine once again and try to access it through the web browser and see if there is a web server running. And we can see right here that there is a web server running on this machine. And once we hover our mouse over a post, we can see that it's trying to access comment.ctf. Now let's have a look at the nmap scan, and then we will add the virtual host in the etc host file. We can see right here that we've got port 22 for SSH and port 80 for Apache HTTPD. So this is great. There are no other open ports in this machine. So we now know that the only way of gaining access to this machine is through a web attack. Now let's go ahead and edit the etc host file and add the virtual host. So I'm going to copy the IP address of the machine once again and paste it right here. And the virtual host should be comment.ctf. Now let's save the file and let's try to access comment.ctf. And as you can see, guys, the page loads.
At this stage, we have so many clues that the target website uses WordPress. First of all, we've seen the URL structure, and you can verify this by going to a default URL or a default directory that exists in WordPress, such as WP content or WP plugin or even WP admin. The nmap scan also told us that this is a WordPress website. And finally, as shown in my courses, you can use tools such as Netcraft or WhatWeb to tell you what web applications are running on the target system. A lot of you might be familiar with a tool called WP Scan, which basically discovers vulnerabilities in WordPress websites, but it does this based on the version of WordPress that is installed and based on the plugins installed. So basically, Dimitris here is doing what the tool does, but he's doing it manually instead of relying on this tool. He's doing this to first of all show you that the tool doesn't do any magic. It simply looks at the plugins installed, looks at their version, and show you the vulnerabilities in these plugins, and it does the same search for the installed version of WordPress.
And now let's click on a post. We can see right here that this is a zSecurity post, and we can see right here that there is a comment plugin, and we can now go ahead and check the WP content plugins directory and see if there is directory listing. So I'm going to do just that, content plugins. And yes, indeed, there is directory listing over here, which means that we can see all of the directories and files within this directory. Now let's try to access wp discuss and read the readme.txt. And as you can see, guys, this is version 7.0.4. So now let's have a look on the web. Let's try to see if there are any exploits for this plugin. I'm gonna search this. The second thing we get is an exploit DB page, so let's click on this. And we can see that this gives us remote code execution and it can be unauthenticated, which means that we don't need any credentials at all in order to gain remote code execution to this web server. So now I'm just gonna copy this exploit and I'm gonna save it in my downloads folder. And now I'm gonna run it. So it's gonna be Python 3, I'm gonna specify the root directory and the downloads and the file. Now as you can see, guys, it asks us for a URL and a blog post. So I'm just gonna specify the URL of this server. And now let's go ahead and get a blog post. I need to copy this and I'm gonna add it here with the p argument. So now I'm just gonna hit enter and see what this does. We can see that it is trying to upload the web cell. And now as you can see, guys, the cell was successfully uploaded in this location. Let's try to run a command over here and it says that it failed to execute PHP code, but that's fine. We can go ahead and access this file. We can remove this. And we can see that it did actually download. So I'm just going to specify the cd argument and do ls. And we can see, guys, that we've got the remote code execution over here. We can see the file. Now all of this is great. Now what is left for us to do in order to gain a full remote access to this machine is to download a reverse PHP cell and then access it through the web server. So I'm just going to run the wget command. I need to specify my IP address. And I'm going to call the name rev.php. So now I'm just going to locate the PHP reverse file. And we can see it right here. I'm going to copy the location of the file and I'm going to copy and paste it into my current directory. And we can see the file right here. I'm going to change the name of the file and name it rev.php. And now I'm going to edit it. Now all we need to do over here is change the IP address. I'm going to copy my own and paste it right here. I'm going to save the file and I'm going to clear my screen. Now over here we need to run the simple HTTP server. Actually, I'm going to run it on port 80. And now here we can set up the listener with nc lvnp and we have to specify port 8888. Now we can run this. And as you can see, guys, we have a GET request over here, which means that the file was successfully downloaded on the server. And we can remove this file from the request and add rev.php. Now let's hit enter. And as you can see, guys, we've got the connection. Now there is another file that I need to download to this server, which is linpiece.sh.
Linpiece is a tool that can be used to discover interesting paths on the target system that could possibly be used to escalate your privileges to a higher privileged user. Now, Dimitri's in this example is actually using it to simply just discover interesting paths, and you'll see that he's going to be able to discover a location that contains very useful credentials.
So before we do anything on the web server, we're going to cd to the tmp directory. And I'm going to run the wget command once again. I need to get my IP address once again because I keep forgetting it. And I'm going to specify linpiece.sh. And as you can see, guys, linpiece.sh was also successfully downloaded. Now we're going to do python 3 c import pty. And now we're going to just spawn a pty cell. And I'm going to also export term equals xterm. Now I'm going to be able to clear my screen, and we don't need the web server anymore, so I'm just going to turn that off and close this terminal. So now this is great so far. We have the initial access to this machine. Now all we need to do is actually find some information and not root this machine. We have to just find information on this server and then use this information in order to root the Windows machine. I'm going to clear my screen once again, and now I need to run the linpiece.sh file. I'm going to change the permission of the file, and now we can run it. Let's see what we get. Now, as you can see, guys, it's searching for interesting files, and we can see a directory here which is called Windows Server Old. So this indicates that there is an old Windows Server directory which hosted the website. Now we can just wait for the linpiece scan to end, and we can go ahead and have a look at the Windows Server Old directory. So I'm just going to cd to var www html, and as you can see, guys, we have the Windows Server Old directory right here. I'm going to copy the name of this directory and change my directory to this one, and as you can see, it's just an WordPress directory, and we can see a certain file called passwords.txt. So let's have a look at this. It says right here that passwords for the old Windows machine are stored in the SQL file. Now this is great because it's not that easy to edit files and viewing files while being in the terminal. We can now just get this file from this server to our own Kali machine and then inspect it. Now what I'm going to do is python 3m http server on port 8000. And now I'm going to get the IP of the machine once again. I'm going to paste it right here and specify the file name, which is olddb.sql. I forgot to specify port 8000. And now as you can see, guys, we have the file over here, and I'm going to open it with the text editor. Before searching for any passwords or users in this file, we can go ahead and check something over here. We can see that there is a user called Jason. Now with this information, we can just go ahead and search for Jason inside this file. And we can see that the Jason name is mentioned 6 times in this file.
Alternatively, you can just do Ctrl F to search within this document and look for the word admin, and you'll notice that Jason actually has admin privileges.
So let's go ahead and check all of this. And as you can see, guys, we have the WP users table over here, and we have Jason and what appears to be his password. Now that we have our credentials, we can go ahead and start hacking the second machine. Now, since we are not able to run this machine on TryHackMe, we are going to use the OVA file that I downloaded from this link and host the second server locally. You can do the same thing if you wish to play around with this machine. Now, there is a comment here which says that we have to make sure that the Windows virtual machine has 2 vCPU cores. So let's get hacking. Now that I have fired up the Windows server on my local machine, I'm going to run an nmap scan using the Nmap GUI application to find the IP of the Windows machine, because there is no other way for me to find it. So here I'm just going to run Nmap. I'm actually also going to check my IP address over here, and I'm going to remove this, add 1 and specify 24. Now this will scan the network for any machines, and we can give this some time to run. So as you can see, we have the machine right here, and it appears that the IP address of this machine is 10.029. So I'm just going to copy this one and run a more intense scan. I'm going to clear my screen here, and I'm going to stop the Nmap application. So I'm going to do nmap-sv-a, and I'm going to specify the p parameter, and I'm also going to specify the IP address of the machine. Now let's also give this some time to run. Now that we have the scan results, we can see that this machine has port 22 open for SSH, port 3389 for the MSWBT server, and we also have port 5985 for HTTP. Now the two interesting ports is the 3389 and the 22 port. Now using the credentials that we found before, we can try to SSH to this machine. I'm going to copy the password and I'm going to do SSH JSON. I'm also going to need to specify the IP address of the machine. I'll say yes, and I'm going to paste the password for JSON. And as you can see, guys, we successfully got into this machine. But what is more interesting is the port 3389. Now let's go ahead and copy this port and paste it on the web browser to see what this port does. And we can see that it is a remote desktop protocol for the Windows server. Now using this information, we can do remote desktop and then specify the IP address of the machine. I'm going to say yes. And we can see the remote desktop pop up. Now I'm going to use the JSON username and I'm going to also need to paste his password again. Okay, well, I can't paste the password. I'm just going to write it down. And we successfully log in to the machine. We can see that this is a Windows Server R2 standard. And if you're not familiar with Windows exploits at all, you should not know what you should use in order to privilege escalate in this machine. But if you don't know anything, you can just do Windows Server 2012 R2 privilege escalation. And if you click on this link for ExploitDB, you should see the MS16032 exploit. Now this exploit will run on the 2012 R2 server and then it will give us a privilege escalation. Now let's just download this exploit and save it in the downloads directory. I'm going to a new tab and then change my directory to the downloads directory and start the Python simple HTTP server over here on port 80. Now going back to the Windows machine, we can start a PowerShell command line. I'm gonna cd to the desktop directory, and now what we want to do is download the file that I just downloaded from ExploitDB. In PowerShell, we can use invoke web request, specify the URL of the machine. It's 10.0.2.20 and the file name was 39.7.19 ps1. Okay, so I'm just gonna write that down, 39.7.19 ps1. I need to specify the out file, which is the name of the file, and I'm gonna call it ms16-032 ps1. As you can see, guys, we have the file over here. Now in order to run this file, we have to open PowerShell with execution bypass. So I'm just gonna open a command prompt over here. I'm gonna close this terminal and I'm gonna run PowerShell execution bypass. Alright, now I'm just gonna change my directory to the desktop directory and I'm going to import the module that I just downloaded. Now I can run invoke ms16-032 and we have a new system CMD over here. Now let's run who am I, and as you can see, guys, we are the NT authority system. Now this means that we have successfully run the privilege escalation exploit and we are the authority the anti-authority system user. Now all that's left for us to do is go back, and as you can see we have the administrator over here. I'm going to change my directory to the administrator into his desktop, and we can see the root flag.txt over here.